10:30, and time now to join Paddy O'Connell for the solemn ceremony of remembrance from the Cenotaph.
Hello. From the Cenotaph, we hear some military orders barked out in the winter sun, which is hitting the southern side of the Cenotaph. There are berets, bugles, brocade, plumes, buckles, all glinting. The leaves are still on the trees this morning, meaning that in the wind that gusts, there is a steady rain of brown falling leaves at the foot of the Cenotaph. 80 years ago, these streets around me were thronged for months, celebrating the end of the Second World War. First on the 8th of May, 1945, when on a balcony opposite me to the left stood Winston Churchill. It's a famous photograph. He's looking down with Parliament Square on his right. 100 days remain till VJ Day, and I'm at the same balcony level on Whitehall, east, at the top of the Cenotaph. That's my level. It's the centre of our morning, and if it were the centre of a clock dial, I'm at 3 o'clock. Opposite to the west is the balcony from where Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth watched in the final years of her reign, and where Queen Camilla and members of the royal party will watch down from shortly, as the King will step forward from a position to the north of the Cenotaph to lay a wreath on behalf of the nation. The blue velvet and the gold ropes of those balconies stare at me now. Pride meets grief here today for the thousands marching. I spoke to Joyce Doherty, mother of Private Jeff Doherty, who lost his life serving with the Parachute Regiment in Afghanistan in 2008, and first to Sid Machin at 101, guided in his wheelchair today by his family. He's one of only 2 known surviving Chindits, the Second World War Special Forces, who fought the Japanese from behind their own lines as part of what was often called the Forgotten Army. He told me how the war claimed lives all around him.
You never had a lot of time to do much at all. I mean, we never had time to bury anybody. I mean, you just used to grab their dog tags, take them off them, and hand them in.
And what does the Remembrance Weekend mean to you?
A remembrance of what happened to the people who lost their lives. I was right in the army from 1942 until I returned to England in 1945.
So your family had not seen you for more than 3 years?
No, that's about right, yeah.
This is also a reminder of what it's like for families of service people, because they must have been worried for you every day in all that time.
Well, it's sort of things you don't think about at the time. Today, I mean, it is such a long time ago that the people that are left still remember those times and the hard times they were. But it's hard for people to understand what it was like. It's like a lot of these things, as time goes by, things sort of slip.
He was very, very easy to have around. Everybody loved him, and he watched the film A Bridge Too Far and then joined the Parachute Regiment as soon as he was old enough. He was very, very proud of that Marine Beret.
When he set off for Afghanistan, did you fear that mission?
I was 100% one of those mums that was super proud, of course, but I never thought that would happen to us. I spoke to JJ for the last time on his 20th birthday.
And how soon after that did you get the news?
2 days later. And I just never expected that our JJ wasn't going to come home.
It was not a popular war. How would you summarise the public's attitude?
I've heard so many times, what a waste. My son's life wasn't a waste. He knew the sacrifices and he knew the risks.
What will be in your mind as you walk past the Cenotaph?
JJ's going to be the forefront of my mind because he never got to come home. It does make everybody stop and think once a year for all the lives that were lost and all the sacrifices that were made. There'll never be a family that's not behind it with a missing chair at Christmas.
With thanks to Joyce Doherty and Sid Machin. At 101, he's one of 6 101-year-olds who will be here in the march past today. He's older than the standardised music service we'll hear shortly, as it takes us up to Big Ben striking the 11th hour, evoking the 11th day of the 11th month when the guns fell silent on the killing fields of the First World War. Amid the patriotism back then was anger too. Demobilisation took too long. Untold numbers of men were physically and mentally shattered. Millions of the women who worked in the munitions factories wouldn't get the vote for another 10 years. The toll of that war meant there were so many more women in the country than men. The parliamentarians didn't know how they'd vote. Downing Street's gated now, and the great and the good were unprepared for the way the public greeted the arrival of the Cenotaph. For families whose slain sons were never found in the mud and mechanised slaughter of the First World War, this was their grave. You're joining a programme that has linked the Cenotaph to families and nations since 1928. Beneath me, with his back to the Cenotaph, is the Commanding Officer Household Division Bands, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Halliday. He's on a podium facing south, where watching for his cue are the band and buglers of the Royal Marines, the massed bands of the Household Divisions, the pipes and drums of the Royal Corps of Signals, and the band and trumpeters of the Royal Air Force. With his bearskin, his arms raised level on a podium 5 foot tall, it's like the antlers of a stag as his hands reached out, his white gloved finger lifts to get us underway with Rule Britannia. And now the official march of the Royal Navy, Heart of Oak. We always are ready, steady boys, steady. Tune for an old Irish song, The Minstrel Boy, to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you'll find him. Ancient Welsh military march, Men of Harlech, march to glory, victory is hovering o'er you. The order is given to the pipes and drums of the Royal Corps of Signals with the Sky Boat Song. They are wearing the red tartan and green Ogilvy tartan ribbons. That's the order calling the musicians of the Foot Guards bands with 3 traditional melodies from around the British Isles. First, from England, Isle of Beauty. From Wales, David of the White Rock. From Ireland, Oft in the Stilly Night. The pipes and drums now for the Scottish piece Flowers of the Forest, known simply as the Lament. and so to Elgar's Nimrod, the Hunter, the 9th of his Enigma variations, played here with the winter sun casting shadows from the musicians. And now from Henry Purcell, Dido's Lament, When I Am Laid in Earth. Opposite me, on the west side of the Cenotaph, is emerging the choir and clergy of His Majesty's Chapel Royal. They are marching smartly between the guard of honour of the King's Scouts. They're led by the processional cross, adorned with red poppies, carried today by Cornelis Vilkellis. He's been on parade here before as a chorister. They are marching south in order to turn towards the eastern side of the Cenotaph. They're led by the Dean of the Chapels Royal, Dame Sarah Mullally, Bishop of London. She'll lead our service in a few minutes after 11. She worked in the Department of Health and was ordained later in life and is to be installed as the first woman Archbishop of Canterbury in March 2026. She has now reached the eastern side of the Cenotaph beneath me, where stand detachments from the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment, and members of the civilian services and the Coast Guard. The choir of the Chapels Royal traces its history back more than 900 years. Senior members of the clergy and laity are here, all religions and none, and there are no religious emblems or inscriptions on the Cenotaph itself. And now comes the political procession. Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, political leaders have come out from the door of the Foreign Office. They're standing opposite me on the western side of the Cenotaph. There are 8 previous Prime Ministers taking position in the second row. Sir John Major, Sir Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Lord Cameron, Baroness May of Maidenhead, Boris Johnson, Elizabeth Truss, Rishi Sunak. King Charles's mother, our longest-serving monarch, saw a total of 15 Prime Ministers in her entire reign. Chiefs of Staff are emerging through the door now, and behind them are the High Commissioners and Ambassadors, countries who saw great losses of men and women during the wars in histories that are not often told. Representatives of the faith and belief communities. The whole area around the Cenotaph is filling now with faces and people who are carrying their wreaths, which will, by the end of the service, carpet the foot of the Cenotaph. Its silent stone scream of never again, ignored almost constantly since it was placed here. Today, in the Sunday papers, the historian Anthony Selden writes that bullies are back from east to west, and it's not enough to celebrate winning the Second World War. We should be a society that remembers why we fought it. So the picture here is that we await the royal party. To the south of the Cenotaph, the musicians with their instruments shining in the sun face north, and we look at the drum majors standing at the front of the parade facing north, their straight dress, gold lace and velvet riding cap, scarlet cloaks. The senior drum major on parade today is Major Dan Fairley of the Coldstream Guards. We see the white plumes of the Grenadier Guards, the blue plumes of the Irish Guards, the white and green plumes of the Welsh Guards, and the red plumes of the Coldstream Guards. The parade is brought to attention as opposite me, emerging onto the balconies, are Her Majesty the Queen and the Princess of Wales, the Duchess of Edinburgh, the Duke of Kent, and the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. Beneath them, the royal party, emerging now, led by His Majesty the King, followed by the Prince of Wales and Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh. Shortly, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery will fire a solitary World War I field gun from Horse Guards Parade to represent the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. It will coincide with Big Ben striking the hour, the same bell heard by those who returned from that war or who lost those who did not. The silence which follows evokes the end of hostilities. the last post sounded by the buglers of the Royal Marines, and we heard the boom of the 13-pounder field gun which saw service in World War I. The King steps forward now in the uniform of Field Marshal to lay his wreath, greatcoat, poppy and sword at his left side. He's placing the wreath to the design of that of his grandfather, George VI. Stepping back, he is now carefully facing the cenotaph, his gloved hand in salute. Queen Camilla is looking down. Her father was decorated for gallantry in World War II, as her wreath is laid on her behalf by her equerry, Ollie Plunkett, a major in the Rifles, who salutes smartly as the Queen looks down. Her wreath bears Her Majesty's racing colours, inherited from her grandfather. Stepping forward now, the Prince of Wales. He's in RAF uniform, wing commander, a greatcoat with his poppy and sword. He salutes. He saw 7 years of Operation Military Service. Watching down on him, the Princess of Wales, who's standing next to the Queen. The Duke of Edinburgh steps forward. He's in the uniform of the Royal Wessex Yeomanry. He salutes, turns, and looking down on him, the Duchess of Wessex. She's in the balcony. The Princess Royal is not here today. She's in Australia for the Anzac Memorial commemorations, and her wreath is being laid by her equerry, Lieutenant Colonel Catherine Skinner, in the Royal Regiment of Artillery. She salutes. Princess Royal is Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Australian Corps of Signals. And the wreath now of the Duke of Kent is being laid by his equerry, Captain Peter Myborough of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. He salutes as the sun strikes his face. The Duke of Kent looks down. Number 1, attributed to Beethoven, played by the Foot Guards Band. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has stepped forward to the west side of the cenotaph. He's laying his wreath, steps back and bows his head. He resumes his place in front of the former Prime Ministers, in the second row, and stepping forward with her wreath now is the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. She's walking carefully up the shallow steps, laying her wreath next to that of the Prime Minister's, and she stands back, her head bowed in reflection. Wreath-laying continues with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey MP, who's reached his position on the west side of the cenotaph now and is just laying his wreath, 1 foot on the shallow middle step, 1 on the lower, and he steps back and bows his head. He's looking up, he's taking a moment to look up at the stone structure above him. A wreath now laid on behalf of two of our political parties, the SNP and Plaid Cymru parliamentary group, laid this year by the Plaid Cymru leader, Liz Saville-Roberts. Robinson is stepping forward. He's leader of the Democratic Unionist Party and leader of the DUP in the UK House of Commons. The Speaker of the House of Commons takes his turn now, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, and he is today representing Parliament and all members and staff of the House of Commons. A swift bow of his head and back to his place as the Speaker of the House of Lords, Lord McFall, follows him southwards. I can read the inscription on his wreath in solemn remembrance, and he's laying it on behalf of Parliament and representing members of the House of Lords and staff too. It's in the streets and offices opposite this structure that decisions are taken to send young people to war on behalf of the state, and the public has often had a conflicting reaction to those decisions, and this moment carries the significance of our political leaders facing the Cenotaph once a year. Yvette Cooper and Shabana Mahmood are walking together. Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and they're together because they are laying their wreaths on behalf of the three intelligence agencies, MI5, Special Intelligence Services, SIS, known as MI6, and GCHQ. And there are some of those who fell for the country from the intelligence agencies whose names are never known publicly. The three Crown dependencies, Jersey, Guernsey and the Isle of Man, the Channel Islands, were occupied for 5 years in the war, and the inhabited overseas territories will each lay their wreaths. They'll be followed by 49 High Commissioners representing the Commonwealth countries. They will lay wreaths in groups, placing their wreaths on all sides of the Cenotaph except the north. In the first group, on the west side, are Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Ghana and Malaysia. Yavar Abbas was a student in British India when the Second World War broke out. He joined up and was a cameraman filming his comrades fighting the Japanese in what became known as Britain's Forgotten Army. Now 104, he had a starring role at the VJ Day commemorations this year, addressing the King directly. He told me for this programme how he fought for George VI, even though he wanted the end of British rule.
I was a staunch nationalist who would never think of joining the army, the Imperial Army. But I could see what was happening. Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, coming to the war. So it was rampant in Europe. And India was coming under danger because Japanese were advancing.
And so this is a very peculiar position for a young man to be in. Yeah. You wanted the end of colonial India, right. And you went to fight for the motherland.
It's a dichotomy. India is now under attack by the Japanese. I didn't want to exchange masters from one empire to another empire. So I joined because I saw that there was no hope of Indian independence. And once I wore the king's uniform, I was proud of that.
History sometimes forgets the role of the people who died around you in your own country for the empire. If I was reaching now into some papers in a plastic folder, thank you so much.
Burma, February 28, 1945. At the moment the sun is going down on the Irrawaddy, which we have just crossed after a very hard battle. The Japanese are not more than 3/4 of a mile from here. We are moving out in the first light of day. There is every chance of my not coming back. I've been here on this front for a month, and 3 times I've been just a couple of feet from death.
What you have shared with me is an insight into what war does to people.
That's right, that's right. I said the biggest crime is not those that are committed in war. The biggest crime is war itself. Why do people go to war? What is it that drives them? Why can't they just talk their differences and settle it?
And as Yavar was speaking to us, the second group of High Commissioners laid their wreaths: Nigeria, Cyprus, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda and Kenya. The third group laying today on the south side: Malawi, Malta, Zambia, the Gambia, Singapore, Guyana, Botswana, Lesotho and Barbados. Singapore, the scene of the largest surrender of British forces ever recorded. Its strategic position on the shipping routes between Asia and the West saw an army of 85,000 captured. The fourth group, Mauritius, Eswatini, Tonga, Fiji, Bangladesh, the Bahamas, Grenada, Papua New Guinea, the Seychelles, the Commonwealth of Dominica, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The fifth and final group laying will consist of 11 on the east side: Belize, Antigua and Barbuda, the Maldives, St. Christopher and Nevis, Brunei Darussalam, Namibia, Cameroon, Mozambique, Rwanda, Gabon and Togo. In 2021, a century later, the UK offered an unreserved apology for failures properly to commemorate black and Asian troops who fell fighting the First World War. Some troops were commemorated collectively, or their names were recorded in registers, while their white counterparts had headstones. Dividing the dead, said a report, was largely down to pervasive racism. Representatives of the Commonwealth countries have finished laying their wreaths, and I read a book, Black Poppies, that said that the contribution of Commonwealth countries is often not known by the descendants themselves of those people who fought. Stepping forward together, the Ambassador of Ireland, Martin Fraser, and the Ambassador of Nepal, Chandra Kumar Gimare, laying their wreaths together. The Gurkhas, recruited from Nepal since 1816, have bravely supported Britain ever since. 200,000 volunteers from pre-partitioned Ireland fought World War I. The Chiefs of Staff, the Chief of the Defence Staff, Air Marshal Sir Richard Knighton, the First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff, Sir General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, the Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Rowley Walker, the Chief of the Air Staff, Marshal Harvey Smith, stepped forward together. On the bottom step of the east side of the Cenotaph, they're laying their wreaths. They salute as one, they turn as one, they're facing north and falling back towards me, beneath me on the balcony. Stepping forward now are the representatives of the Merchant Navy and Fishing Fleets. Captain Sir Ian McNaught is laying for them. The Air Transport Auxiliary Association, Mr. John Webster. Chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, Sir Andy Marsh. They go forward together. And Sir Andy Marsh is laying on behalf of the civilian services. Our service will begin.
O Almighty God, grant, we beseech thee, that we who here do honour to the memory of those who have died in the service of their country and of the Crown, may be so inspired by the spirit of their love and fortitude that, forgetting all selfish and unworthy motives, we may live only to thy glory and to the service of mankind. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Teach us, good Lord, to serve thee as thou deservest, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labour and not to ask for any reward, save that of knowing that we do thy will. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Unto God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace this day and always. Amen.
Trumpeters from the Royal Air Force will now sound the reveille, signal of a new dawn. I've not heard applause at this moment before, but I'm certainly hearing it now. Perhaps you can hear it too. That's from the 10,000 who are to the north, stretching up towards Trafalgar Square. The King is now leading the royal party back opposite me through the west of the Cenotaph, through the door of the Foreign Office. And then the politicians, diplomats, the clergy will all follow, and the scene will become empty of the great and the good and filled by servicemen and women past and present. The youngest here today is 8, the oldest on parade in his 101st year, I believe. Politicians and diplomats who are walking now are tackling multiple wars in Europe. I discussed what's on their mind with Patricia Clavin, Professor of Modern History at Oxford University, and asked her to compare this unstable time with years gone by.
I'm a Cold War baby, so I grew up with the terror in my heart of nuclear warfare, and I'm really quite disturbed, if not sometimes genuinely frightened, about the situation that we now find ourselves in. Even though I grew up with a lot of conflict, there was also always efforts at cooperation, and I'm worried that we've lost some of those skills and we've forgotten some of those lessons.
The post-World War II order, that's broken down too, so we have a sort of multipolar world order now.
We often refer to the international order as a kind of rules-based international order, but in fact, the rules came in some ways later, or that wasn't really the main purpose of building the UN system. It was really about trying to develop peace in a world that had been filled with not just 2 world wars, but colonial wars, civil wars. That kind of will was very powerfully present in 1945. And in some senses, I worry that we've sort of forgotten the destruction that brought that creation about.
Should we pose the question in 2025 that we've simply ignored the people who said, look at the Cenotaph and commit to no more war? We've ignored them.
We have ignored how difficult it is to create and sustain peace. And I think many of the people who advocated very powerfully for peace after the First World War and after the Second World War were realists. They weren't kind of dreamers, naive dreamers or utopian thinkers that we sometimes present them as. And I think we've ignored quite how challenging it is to sustain it.
We could look at the Cenotaph from our side and see sacrifice, but the stones that stare back at us could see complacency.
There's a kind of version of international relations thought that's kind of realist, and it argues that the international system is anarchic and it can't be controlled, it can't be managed. But in fact, it is possible to build peace, but it doesn't come easily and it doesn't come cheap.
Patricia Clavin, Professor of Modern History at Oxford University. The sun has gone in as we were listening to her. The scene here now is that we have more music to come from the bands, and we'll hope to bring you the much-loved Trumpet Voluntary from Jeremiah Clark, and then we will join some of those who are here, perhaps some of those we heard applauding, those who will be in the march past. And we have a BBC colleague among them. The march past is arranged by the Royal British Legion, which took over responsibility for this event, the march past, in 1927. And there are some other anniversaries this year, and let me give you the detail of who's here. The youngest marcher I mentioned is 8-year-old Evie Roots from Scotty's Little Soldiers, whose dad, Warrant Officer 2 Adam Roots, served with the Army Air Corps and sadly died in a parachuting accident in 2018. let me take you from my balcony 3 floors up above the Cenotaph to the streets below to meet my BBC colleague Catherine Biaruhanga, who's below me and is our eyes and ears out there in the crowds. Catherine.
Good morning, Paddy. I join you from just north of the Cenotaph, opposite Horse Guards, and that's where those marching are lining up, ready to begin this procession. We'll soon be hearing here the sound of thousands of boots marching in unison. I can tell you the crowds are anticipating that moment. As you mentioned, Alyssa, earlier, it's been rather warm this morning. The weather is unusually mild for November, making it that bit easier for the crowds around me. And all generations are here. I've seen fathers carrying their children on their shoulders. I saw some young women perched up on a ledge trying to get a better view. And even one veteran told me he returns to the same perfect spot, which allows him to take in all of the ceremony. I've been speaking to 15-year-old Polly Lees, who's marching for the first time. She's with the Welsh Scouts and her grandmother, Christine. They're here in remembrance of Christine's father, Sergeant Keith Brown, who was taken as a prisoner of war for 3 years in Burma.
I'm very excited, and I think it's important for younger generations to carry on the tradition of remembering.
Have you had a chance to meet some of the other people marching today? Have you had a look around? What does it feel like being here?
I've met lots of the other explorers marching, and I've seen lots of the very important people around, and it's just an honour to be here.
Christine, you've marched several times before.
I have.
I believe this is your 6th time marching today.
Yes.
And you march in remembrance of your father who served in the Far East. Of course, this year we've been marking the 80th anniversary of VJ Day. How important has this year been for you?
Well, it's been very important, very important. We started off earlier in August with flags out in front and going to services. But altogether, it's very important for me to march here with the Royal British Legion Remembrance Parade, remembering the sacrifice my father and so many other people made, but particularly my father and his best friend from his regiment, who were captured at the fall of Singapore in 1942, incarcerated in Changi jail, and then moved by cattle truck up to Kanchanaburi on the Burma Railway.
Your father's best friend never made it, never came back. Your father did, but he suffered from PTSD for many years. What was life like for him?
Well, I was so young, I really don't know. I've got to be honest, I always just thought I had a bit of a bad-tempered dad, like so many people did. So, I really didn't, when I was like 5, 6, 7, I didn't really understand. It was only in latter years that I understood, and these days, what PTSD actually is. And so, yes, he did suffer all his life.
Polly, you're here with your grandmother. You've heard about her life of service. How much has she inspired you? Do you want to tell her?
I think she's inspired me very much, especially to be here and to keep remembering, and so that younger generations as well can keep up remembering, so that we never forget people like my great-grandfather.
Christine, I can see you're a bit emotional now, I guess, speaking about your father. What will you be thinking about as you're marching today?
Well, it's all a bit light-hearted to start off with, because you meet up with people of the same ilk. I'm marching with the children of the Far Eastern prisoners of war. But as soon as the ceremony starts, and you do just focus really in on my dad. And I do remember the first time I marched past the Cenotaph was highly emotional. It is emotional every time, but the first time I went past it was really just very, very, very sad.
And how about you, Polly?
I think I'll be looking around at all the thousands and thousands of people who are marching, and just trying to remember everyone who sacrificed their time.
Polly and Christine Lees there. Paddy, one of the images I will take away from today is the sight of servicemen and women proudly displaying their medals on their winter coats as they make their way through the crowd. People have come here from all over the country, different parts of the world as well. It's a sacrifice for some, those here with very young children, those who are older. Standing, marching can't be easy. But as Christine Lees told me as we said goodbye, their unease is nothing compared to the sacrifice the veterans and servicemen and women have made.
Catherine, thank you very much. A bit of a bad-tempered dad. She said, I thought that he was a bit of a bad-tempered dad. What an amazing account to hear. Just one of millions being recalled today. Catherine down on the streets around Whitehall, around Horse Guards. And as we were listening to the family, the Royal British Legion National President, Vice Admiral Paul Bennett, laid the Royal British Legion's wreath. So many people volunteering to help this day get underway. And there are some anniversaries as well today. We've got 20 Second World War veterans who are registered to march. We think Arthur Oborne is the oldest here today. We heard from Sid Machin in our programme earlier. He was also at the VJ Day 80 commemorative event. Fighting with Pride is here. They're marking the 25th anniversary since the ban on LGBT plus personnel in the armed forces were lifted. 2 weeks ago, His Majesty the King unveiled a new LGBT memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum. I watched last night from the Royal Albert Hall as one of those dismissed from the service said she was told she could choose between being herself and being a soldier, but she could not be both. Veterans have travelled as far from Australia to be here today. As part of its bicentenary, a group celebrating 200 years of the modern railway will be marching for the first time, as well as the railway's crucial role carrying people to safety and transporting men and machinery to the front line. Around 20,000 railway workers from Britain lost their lives during World War I and World War II. Here's a letter. I mentioned the Australian veterans here. Here's a letter from June 16. Captain Alexander Goodall and his wife Cassandra of Brisbane, Australia, received the dreadful news that their son John had been seriously wounded in France. The 6 months he spent recovering in hospital were agonising, and they were relieved to hear that he'd made a full recovery. He returned to duty in 1917. But just a few months later, Captain and Mrs. Goodall received another letter, this time confirming that John had been killed in action. His friend, Private Charles King, recalling what happened, said he was sniped, being shot between the eyes and was killed instantly. I saw his body and examined him. He was my mate. Goodall was just 20. He had survived the horrors of Gallipoli and being wounded 3 times. Perhaps it's no surprise then to read the inscription chosen by his parents focuses not on hope or glory, but at the unjustness of his passing. Merging John's own voice, said the Commonwealth War Grave Commission, with a post-war sentiment shared by many, and the inscription reads, I am here as the result of uncivilized nations. The RAF watch the skies. Among them is Group Captain Lisa Foy from Air Command and Control Force Commander at RAF Bulmer, a key role responsible for UK airspace. She's one of the serving Armed Forces members here today. She's from a service family, and she told me what remembrance means to her.
I joined Air Cadets at 14, having been to a careers fair at school, and I've pretty much been in uniform ever since.
You also discovered that your grandfathers were in World War II.
Yes, my dad's father was in the army and unfortunately was a Far East prisoner of war for the duration of the war. He was in Malaya when Singapore fell and then spent the rest of his time interned in Changi prisoner of war camp.
Did he ever talk about that?
He talked about it to me, not really anyone else in the family. I think that military connection that we forged with me being in the Air Force gave him some sense of being able to share some of the really difficult times that he had and the stories that he was able to convey to me.
And the risk of being taken prisoner and the risk of injury and death in the armed forces, is that something you talk about with your family? And did you ever write a letter to be read after your death?
Yes, I've written a number of letters that you write to have sat there, unfortunately, if you weren't to come home.
So that really does tell you every day it's not really a desk job?
No, anyone in the armed forces can be asked to go and serve their country and make that ultimate sacrifice.
And it's a mistake for younger people to think that it's a glorification of war, isn't it? Everyone who goes to the Cenotaph would agree that war's the wrong solution.
Yes, I think that glorification of war is misunderstood. It is that moment of sombre reflection, but also recognising that ultimate sacrifice that so many people made. And that's not just those in the military, the sacrifice that so many civilians made.
And when you observe the silence, what will you be thinking of?
I'll be obviously thinking back to my own family. I'll be thinking to some close friends that have unfortunately passed away, but also an immense sense of pride and gratitude for those that still continue to serve alongside me.
Lisa Foy. Also here, Eileen Marshall from the HMS Ganges Association. She's 98. She joined the Wrens aged 17 from her home in Yorkshire. And she was told to take your ID card, your ration card, your respirator, your torch, and a suitable dressing gown for the air raid shelter. Eileen was soon promoted to leading Wren, and we're very proud that she's here somewhere in the crowd today. Let me return, if I may, to Yavar Abbas. He's going to be 105, and as we heard earlier, he had to decide in the Second World War if he'd fight against British rule of India or against the Japanese. Happily, he chose the British 14th Army. And it was his impromptu speech at the National Arboretum to mark 80 years since the end of the Second World War which moved the King and Queen to tears. I was there and I saw it, and I wanted to meet him to bring his reflections for you here today. And here they are, talking to me about remembrance.
I remember the people who gave their lives. To me, the Cenotaph tells me, no more wars, please. If it's used to glorify warfare, would be scandalous. I would march with the Cenotaph, but I can't march now. I have to be on a wheelchair at my age. I would march to pay my respects to those who gave their today for our tomorrow.
You're summarising the Kohima epitaph there in what you're saying, and you fought in that theatre of war. You joined up under one king. Then you found yourself facing his grandson. You found yourself facing another king at the National Arboretum to commemorate the end of the war, VJ Day. And you said to the world, I'm going off script.
I had no intention of doing that. But when I saw Charles, I want to salute my brave king. I'm intensely proud. And the king stood up and shook my hands, and he wouldn't let go. I had tears in my eyes. And he treated me as if I was part of the family. I was so deeply moved.
Yavar Abbas. He also told me he's ready to serve the king today, if needed. He'll be 105 in December. Well, it was their first time at the Cenotaph, the Royal Corps of Signals. We hear them now. We'll be on our way shortly. Thousands will march past the balcony where we've brought you our programme from today. Can I leave you with a reflection on remembrance in the form of just one letter? It was written in 1944 by Benjamin Pry of 47 Royal Marine Commando to be read by his sweetheart Peggy in the event of his death. He did die, aged 21, in January 1945, 5 months before VE Day. Peggy found love again and raised a family, but always kept this letter. One of her children, by the husband that new love became, was Linda Barry. She took the letter to share on a battlefield tour last week, visiting Marine Pry's grave in the Netherlands to say his name and pay respect. as an act of remembrance to a man she never knew, but whom her mum had once loved years ago. Here is that letter. Dearest darling Peg, if you do ever receive this letter, you will know that I have had it. But I want you to know this, darling. I went down loving you and fighting for our happiness, which I have always looked forward to and longed for. But remember this, darling, you were the only girl in the world for me. But if ever you do find another chap, I hope he is able to make you as happy as I would have made you. Well, darling, I died loving you only. Ben. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kisses at the bottom of that letter. There, we must leave you from the Cenotaph and the events here in 2025. The crowds will continue here, and all of us would like to thank you joining a programme which began in 1928 from our programme team. Goodbye.